Good afternoon, everybody. The Executive Director of San Antonio Charter Moms, and these are to help families learn what they need to know to keep their kids educated, to make good choices about schools, to find out about learning activities that they can do at home or around town. And I'm super excited because this month we're going to feature several school founders who have applications in the pipeline to potentially open amazing new schools in San Antonio in August of 2022, which feels like so far away, but it is really just around the corner. So so today we're talking with Anthony Gordon, who is the founder of Revolution Public Schools, and they are in the process of, if all goes well, opening their first campus, which would be called S.H. James Preparatory Academy. So I'll pop that up on screen. And he's currently an EdLaunch Fellow with City Education Partners, and he's just been a great partner. You know, we've had conversations about digital divide and things like that. I've learned so much from Anthony. We've talked about what are the opportunities and challenges on the east side of San Antonio. And he has an amazing background. He's worked in private schools, charter schools, and traditional public schools. And he's very connected with the east side community because the school, S.H. James, that's his grandfather. And he was the first African-American city council member in San Antonio. So Anthony, it's so good to have you on the show.
Definitely. Thank you for having me. And thank you for this platform. It really is an amazing platform for us as educators and for our parents and communities to be closer connected to the education process. So thank you.
Well, I really appreciate that. Oh, and so shout out, I'm going to name drop the San Antonio Charter Moms discussion group, and Anthony's wife, Ashley, is one of our power users. So, so shout out to Ashley.
She definitely is.
We really appreciate her. Yeah. Okay. So Anthony, I want to mention that in the description of the video, there's a link to the blog post that you put together. I asked you basically I want to tell people why is it so important to found S.H. James Preparatory Academy? What is the vision behind Revolution Public Schools? And so it's all in the blog post. I encourage people to click through and read that. But I'm also really glad to have you, live to be able to ask you these questions and bring it to life. So, I know that you're very connected to the East Side community. What are some of the inequities, the gaps? What are some of your concerns about the east side of San Antonio, and how do you feel like education can help address that?
Yeah, well, I think just to start off, just recognizing San Antonio is one of the most economically segregated major cities in our country, right? On the east side, poverty levels are twice the state average. Median income is less than half the state average. And I think we always have to start with economics because, we understand that these factors really affect many aspects of community as it relates to resources, infrastructure, things of that nature. East Side is also evolving as it relates to student populations. There's been a huge increase in our Afro-Latinx immigrant population on the East Side, which brings an additional set of challenges, especially as it relates to education. Some of the other gaps, of course, we talked about the digital divide with technology as it relates to infrastructure, access to devices, and education, and understanding, how to use that technology. And then access to information. This could be resources, services, physical and mental health services, educational opportunities, not just for kids, but for adults as well, because oftentimes a lot of our adults in these communities have experienced some of the same inequities in education and need supports as well. Secure housing, quality employment, food security. We could go on and on, right? There's a ton of issues that we can address. And that's not to say that these issues don't affect other communities, especially in the wake of COVID. A lot of communities are dealing with several issues. But I think where we begin to see the difference is when these issues are compounded, right? So when you have communities and families that are experiencing multiple conditions on this list, that's where we can begin to see some of these gaps, as you mentioned, as they're defined. I like to look at it through a lens of access as opposed to gaps. I feel that language is very important. And I think a lot of times when we talk about gaps, it places the blame on the individual and not on the condition. So, really just beginning to change that conversation and talk about access. And because I know from my own personal experience, working on the East Side, working in many underserved communities, that once our students have this access, they thrive. If in many cases they exceed expectations, but it's that when you know type of scenario, right? So it's like having access to the opportunities to allow our students to thrive is really what I would say is our biggest push and where we want to focus our work at SH James Prep.
Yeah, and it's through the lens of education that
right.
Right. I mean, there are so many barriers to access in many different areas you talk about, right? Like economics that affects digital divide and housing and food and health, but it can be discouraging because it feels so insurmountable. But you have through your experience, that you can make a difference in the area of education, right? That you've worked in private schools, you've worked in charter schools, you've worked in traditional public schools, and now you're in this fellowship year where you can, connect with people in the community, listen to what their concerns are. So again, what have you, from your different school experiences, like what are things you've seen, like maybe some schools that were strong in academics, but sort of weaker in school culture, and then others that, had great culture responsive teaching, but maybe didn't meet certain goals in other areas?
Yeah, I also would add into that mix homeschool. Our homeschoolers, especially here in San Antonio, it's a often underrepresented and overlooked aspect of education, but there are really great things going on in that environment as well that we could pull into this process. And I think that overall, all of these systems is where we derived our model from, right? Seeing how schools conduct themselves in these different environments has been really influential for me, right? And I like to think that we've pulled a little bit of the best from each one to build out our model and the components of it. For example, charter schools, right? Charter schools have a laser focus on growth. They use data in an amazing ways that I wasn't aware of before I worked in those systems to really drive achievement. And they also do a really great job of developing their teachers and staff. So like those are things I would like to think that we pulled away. They also are really great at creating systems that are sustainable. Districts are often the bedrocks of their communities. And their tradition and spirit, like you can't match it. And you really see it and feel it when you go into these communities. There's a sense of pride, right? Homeschool networks, they work to individualize both student achievement and student enrichment in a way that other systems may not have the time or space to do, but I really think there are things we could pull from that to really like tap into students' interest and really drive the learning and the joy behind the learning, right? And then with private schools, you also have like their ability to speak directly to social and emotional learning at a really in-depth level, and also just the opportunity to give students that access that we were talking about, right? To resources that's invaluable. Like I loved being at my private school and being when I needed a speaker to come in and talk to our students, I could pull in one of our parents who was a doctor or engineer or a politician, or when our basketball team needed uniforms, having two families pay for those uniforms, right? And not having to go through that cycle of fundraising and things of that nature that can really take time away from our focus. So I think there are pieces of each one that are really valuable, and that's where we really pull together to create the model for what SH James Prep is.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate what you're saying, because I like, even though like we still have charter in the name of San Antonio Charter Moms, like we really support parents in finding whatever school model is going to work for their kids. It's just that like most of the change and growth has been in the charter school area for the last 10 years. But there's amazing stuff happening in traditional public schools and private schools. And because of the pandemic, we've seen the growth of homeschooling and pods and micro schools and stuff. And so, it really is like, if you focus on like what's going to help the children the best and what's going to serve the community like the best, then really like don't pay attention to those boundaries, those barriers between like, well, that's a charter school thing or that's a homeschool thing. It's like just borrow from everything.
And I think in addition to that, that has to be on the side of the educators as well, right? Because often we focus on the community, but like that's one of the things that we really wanted to do is we wanted to reach across lines and collaborate, right? Because I'm not successful if only my students are successful, right? It's really up to us as educators to not work in silos, to share, to collaborate. Because like I mentioned, we all have really great things going on, and we all have areas of growth that someone else may be thriving in. So it's really important for us as educators to reach across those lines and have that same understanding that you're talking about with our families and communities.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to come back to what you talked about, like not so much talking about gaps or inequities, but focusing on access to success, right? That like when you know, right? That there's things that students are just not, like, concepts are not being shown about, like how the world works, how to succeed, how to get ahead. And I feel like I got a really good taste of this when my daughter participated in the Youth Entrepreneurship pop-up, and that was back at the beginning of May. It was on, for anyone who wasn't aware that one was happening, it was the day that it rained like crazy. I mean, like really rained like crazy. But the event was still a success, so because you moved it indoors. But so I was wondering if you could talk more about access to success and how that's like key to the model for SHGM's prep.
Yeah, and I think it relates to what we just discussed, right? Like, we can't be afraid to do revolutionary things in the educational space, right? Our focus is more on the experiential learning opportunities we could provide for students, right? I believe that students learn by doing. And so we want to move beyond the traditional project-based learning and into a more experiential learning process, right? Because project-based learning is an amazing platform, right? There's data that says how great students do within it, but what happens after the project, right? So we want to move beyond that project and really get students into that hands-on learning process and actually pushing out these ideas they're creating in these projects, because they're coming up with brilliant ideas and solutions for problems. Why are we stopping them at that point? Let's keep it going. And I think that really relates to our community-based entrepreneurship aspect of our model. We really want our students to have an entrepreneurial mindset. Even if they don't go on to start their own business, having an entrepreneurial mindset will really put them in a great position to thrive long-term, right? It gives them a set of skills that are very valued and very needed, especially in the environment that we're going into post-COVID, who knows what next year may look like, and even 2 or 3 years down the line. And we really want to build out that social entrepreneurship aspect where students are not only learning that entrepreneurial mindset, but they're finding ways to better their community and really be active within their community to create those spaces. And I spoke a little bit about moving beyond the project, right? So our design thinking aspect of our model, every Friday our students will have a 90-minute design thinking cohort where they're working those pods or with those student cohorts to go out and actively pursue solutions to issues that they find within their community, right? We want our students to be active problem solvers. So that really is something that sets us apart. There aren't many schools that really have that focus on entrepreneurship at a deep level that's embedded, especially as it relates to the community aspect. We also want to focus on our students' culture, right? We give students a strength and a pride in themselves and their community that extends beyond their community. That perspective is priceless, especially when we go out into the world, right? Because a lot of our students that we've seen that leave our community that do really well within our charter schools or public school systems may go into larger college systems or even into the workforce and experience culture shock. Right. And it's not only because of the places they are, but it's also because they don't always have a strong grounding in their own culture and identity. So they're trying to figure out things that on multiple levels while also trying to succeed and be successful in whatever mission they're undertaking. So we want to make sure that we really embed that in everything we do at our campus.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so important. There are I've lived in San Antonio for over 20 years, and I'm still learning stuff about the East Side and like amazing things that happen in the great businesses and dynasties of the past. And some businesses are still around, and there's this canvas, there's this opportunity for businesses to build, maybe some of the students will create businesses in the neighborhood and open up new jobs. And But that type of thinking, it gives them the why, right? Of like,
Yes.
okay, well, I want to start a business because there's this problem to solve, right? Like that's how you find customers. And the social aspect means that like it's not just self-interested in, it's wanting to like start a business that also serves people in the community and brings people together. And
Yes.
like what a great set of ideas and values to share with students as they're figuring out where they fit in the world and how they want to make a difference.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very important, and it's something that is truly missing. And it's also something that's going to get our students engaged, because now they're actively pursuing things that they're interested in and they want to see change. And that adds another level to the academic process, and also a level of joy that may be missing as we see it currently.
Yeah. So I want to thing that you mentioned, there was a so as part of your process you've been talking to people in the community, and like including like families and students, like teens, and then but also talking to business owners and asking them like what challenges are they facing, what kind of a workforce are they needing, do they think they'll need in the future. And you mentioned one business owner you talked to who said that you, Anthony, have a tough job because you're trying to educate students now for whatever is going to be coming 10 or 20 years from now, which is so
Exactly.
hard to imagine. I mean, like the job I do, I had no idea that how to prepare for this. Like this depends on social media and mobile phones and like all these things that didn't exist when I was in college or in high school. And so yeah, so you have kind of a tough job. Like you're trying to train students with a versatile set of skills, and so they'll be able to adapt to whatever the world will throw at them. So how are you addressing that? Like what else have you learned from talking to business owners?
Well, I think it's there. I think it's starting at that point, having the conversation, right? Because we can't assume or attempt to predict what's coming, but by talking to experts in different industries, we can get a clear picture of what they foresee and what they forecast, right? And I think some of it is just starting there and building the foundation from there, right? Things are ever evolving, and that business owner that you spoke about, I'll speak to about him directly, but the quote that really stuck out is like, you're preparing, your job is to prepare students for jobs and problems that we don't even know exist yet, right? 2 years ago, none of us would have predicted that we would be literally existing through Zoom for over a year and all of the issues that come along with that. So I think it really is that flexibility and that willingness and ability to reach across the lines again, as we mentioned earlier, and create a space for education that's collaborative, right? I have a friend who's a manager at a CAD engineering firm, and he spoke to me about some of the issues that he's been facing just with the diversity of skill sets within his own office. He has everything from baby boomers to brand new Gen Z kids in this office space, and he's trying to really evolve his leadership and management skills to address their needs, right? Because he's talking about the Gen Z kids that he comes in, he's giving them a traditional workload that he would give to another employee, and they're finishing it by noon, and then they're on YouTube for the rest of the day, right? So, how do you create a workspace that's adaptable to that? And what do we need to be doing as educators to account for that and prepare students for that? You also have some of the newer conversations around college versus certification programs that are going on now. Is college going to be viable within 10 years as a option, or are these new certification programs the wave of the future, where students can go and take micro classes and get certifications and go work at a Fortune 500 company, right? So how are we addressing that in the education process and ensuring that we give our students the best options, especially when you are working with students who are from underserved communities or low income communities who college may be a huge burden for them and their family? what can we do to provide them that access to success that they need long term? And I think, again, it goes back to that idea of not only collaborating with businesses at the foundational level, but also bringing those business owners and those community leaders into the fold of the education and having them be actively involved, because they are the future. They are the employers that we want to be hiring our students in 5 to 10 years. So why would we not involve them in the process at a foundational level for our students?
Yeah, that's so important. I'm so great. I think the fact that you're such a good listener and you're so good at connecting with the people is going to make this S.H. James Prep such a stronger school when it opens. That because like when you talk about, like, I feel like I always learn from you, like whether it's talking about digital divide or talking about like these, the issue of preparing the future workforce in a way that makes sense for employers also makes sense for the students and their families. And like, I think about this a lot because I have a 13-year-old, so I'm trying to plan like, his high school path, what comes after that. And it's bewildering, and it's so different than it was even 20 years ago. And, it just feels like we're walking a tightrope, and like, I don't, but then I try to remind myself, like, there are, like, it doesn't, like what seemed like the right playbook, 20 years ago is like only one of several options these days. And if that playbook doesn't work, throw it out, try a new one, but just like always being humble and asking questions and like getting, the young people involved, like ask them, well, what matters to you? Like what, let's you go out in the community and ask, like, what problems are people trying to solve? Right. And make sure that whatever they're working on, it's meaningful and relevant to them. Because I think Gen Z workforce they're going to be picky about that, right? Yeah. They're not just going to do what they're told.
And opinionated.
That's right. So it's going to be interesting. Yeah. Sooner or later, I'll be taking on interns, and then I'll have to learn this as well. So yeah, but it's amazing what they're capable of too. So it's like you just have to keep an open mind about like the potential is there. But they may need some guidance about like interfacing in a workforce and setting goals and deadlines and things like that. So yeah, every generation has their own. But so one thing that I know is important about the what you're trying to create is that, like, and I mentioned like deadlines and communication in the workforce, but those are kind of the soft skills, right? That's again, it's something that relates to access, that, right? Like if maybe a student who succeeds academically, but doesn't get the soft skills, they may experience like, code switching or, or just, difficult challenges when it's time to, be more self-managed in college or, trying to interface with other people in a workplace. So, but that's something that you're planning to build into the model, is how students can learn those soft skills.
Yeah. And I think for that, I would go straight to our core values, right? So I think it's really embedded and embodied in our core values. So our first core value is community, and that idea of building trust and emotional intelligence, right? We have to work within a collaborative space and share ideas and respect each other. So that's first and foremost for us at our campus. The second one would be consciousness. We want to celebrate culture and identity. And that kind of leads to what you were just talking about having that ability to, not have to code switch and be proud of your culture, right? I should feel free and comfortable to quote a relevant rap song during a PD if I need to, right? Innovation is another piece, like service, right? We want to serve, and we also want to think outside of the box. Joy and just creating an authentic love of learning and teaching, right? We want to create a space where our students are instructors as well as students that are learning, right? Because we can learn a lot from our students just about the way we're operating, the things that are going on with Gen Z, right? And what we need to be paying attention to. And then finally is just self-expression. Student agency, right? We want students to be able to have a conversation, have discourse, have a debate, have a healthy disagreement, right? Manage conflict, accept failure, right? We want to turn our losses into lessons, right? So we want to make sure that these are skills that they embody and participate in on a daily basis, so that they have that muscle memory, right? And it comes naturally to them. So when they're in spaces that don't look familiar, they have this set of skills to fall back on, which we're hoping will be the platform and the launching pad for them for long-term success.
Yeah, they can be authentically themselves
Yes.
in their university setting or in their workplace. And
Yes.
people do their best work when they can be themselves, when they're not,
Exactly.
having to like second guess everything. That's um, yeah, that is so important, and that's an essential part of access, right? Is it feeling that, like you want the students at SC James to believe that they belong wherever their journey takes them, right? That they're not an imposter, right? They're meant to
Yes.
be there, and they have a lot to give, and they can be authentically themselves, like
Mhm.
at whatever high level that they reach.
Exactly. Exactly. It's so important. It's so important, and it increases that comfort level and that confidence, which is what you want, right? You want people who are confident in their skill set and what they bring to the table. But we want to make sure that that's something we foster in our students, so that they live and exude that energy everywhere they go.
Yeah, yeah. Well, okay, so I want to make sure before we wrap up the interview, like I always like to close out letting people know how to reach SH James Prep. Um,
Yes.
I'm wondering, like, um, can you give us like a quick update about where y'all are in the application process? Because so right now it's at the Texas Education Agency, and you're kind of waiting for the next step, right?
Yes. We are patiently and anxiously awaiting to hear back about the commissioner's recommendations for schools that receive their charter and move on for the State Board of Education vote, which takes place later this month in June. So literally any moment now we could be getting that email just to hear if we've made it through to the next round. So keep your fingers crossed for us. We're hoping to make it on and keep the journey going. And the final vote will be later this month in June.
Yeah. Well, I know. Yeah, I mean, you have made it through so many hurdles already. I mean, most applications don't even meet the cut score, right? And y'all already had, an interview with with SBOE back in May, and like, you're just waiting for these additional steps. And I know you've had a lot of support from, city education partners and other community partners, and we're all cheering for you. And
Right.
I hope it's good news, and I hope you're able to get the school going, because I feel like it fills a need, because there are students on the east side of San Antonio, or in the Bexar County region, who deserve access to success, and that this is the on ramp that they need.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, all right. I'm gonna pop the banners up on the screen here. So SH James Preparatory Academy is the name of the campus that you're hoping to start in August of 2022. And then
Yes.
the goal is to reach grades 6 through 12, but it would open with just the younger
No,
grades to start with.
we will be 5th through 12th at full
5th through
capacity.
12.
Our
Okay,
first
sorry.
year for August 2022 will be 5th through 7th. So we'll have 5th, 6th, and 7th grade for our inaugural year.
Okay, got it. Okay, yeah. Oh, that's exciting. Okay, and so if there are parents who are, excited about what they're hearing and want to get the updates, then they can go to the website and get on the mailing list, right?
Yes. Log into our website. The mailing list is right at the top. You put in your name and email address. We're actually sending out a newsletter this week with some updates. So yeah, head over to the website. We also have social media, Facebook and Instagram, where we keep up to date with any pilots, activities, upcoming events, and just providing information that's relevant to our mission and what we're doing. And you also can reach out to me directly to set up one-on-one meetings. My email is agordon at shjamesprep.org. I'll say that again, agordon at shjamesprep.org. If you'd like to set up a one-on-one meeting, I love to talk about education, and I'm sure my wife would be very happy to have me talk to someone else besides her. So please shoot me an email. I would love to have a conversation and find ways to connect and have you be a part of our mission, because we are extremely connected, and it's really important to us to be a part of the community and be of the community, not just in the community.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have to say to anyone listening, really, like getting a chunk of Anthony's time is super valuable. Like I always learn from talking to you, and you just add perspective. Like you're somebody who is like immersed in the community and talking to people all the time, and so I think that adds like richness and validity to your understanding of the situation and what you're trying to do to create opportunities for kids. So yeah, so I'm just really just so excited. I'm cheering for you. Please, like, yeah. when we hear something from SBOE, I'll share it with you about it, and then we can make plans on how we can get this over the finish line.
Yes, and we'll all celebrate together at the end. So yeah, I'll keep you all posted on what's going on as soon as we hear.
Okay, great. Okay, well, yeah, I encourage everybody to click on the description of the video. That'll take you to the guest post that Anthony worked on, and has like links, and like there's a great like history section on the website. It's fascinating about just how rooted this is in the East Side community. And yeah, good luck, Anthony.
Thank you so much, Inga. I really appreciate it.
Okay, take care.
All right.